Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rally Report Podcast, Episode 1. I'm your host, Sean Choi, and let me begin by giving a little introduction to what this podcast will be. As someone who's been following the tour for quite some time now, and ultimately a fan of the sport, I felt there hasn't been a proper medium of coverage in consistently documenting the personalities of the sport. So rather than simply interviewing players, this podcast will explore different areas, hopefully create an atmosphere where players can candidly speak about current happenings within the tour, being able to discuss some relevant and controversial topics such as referees, lack of sport growth, the impact of CSA, the College Squash Association, and thoughts on different players in a casual manner. So I want this platform to be a space where it enables the sport to grow and fans can engage with regularly. So with that being said, I'm really excited to introduce the first guest of the Rally Report podcast, world number 26, the king of headbands, if I may, the Harvard number 1, Victor Crouin. Welcome. How's it going?
Good. Thanks, Sean, for having me on the podcast.
Well, just before I go anywhere, I just want to clear up if you are indeed the number 1 coming into the 2021-2022 season so far. Can we get a confirmation on that?
I would say my teammate Marwan Tariq won the last individual championship, so I would put him at number 1 right now, but so it'll be a back and forth battle. Yeah, looking at the rankings, Youssef Ibrahim might be up there as well. So,
okay. But yeah, so it's currently 9 a.m. right now. Pretty early for some, pretty late for others. I'm curious, what time do you usually wake up?
Yeah, I usually wake up around 7:30, 8 a.m. It's pretty cool because no one's awake at that time, and so I can really do my thing and just take it easy during the morning, and I can also take advantage of that time to go to the squash court in the morning, hit a few balls or do a ghosting, and then go to class later on at like 10:30 or even 9 a.m. if I can't wake up.
So do you usually every morning go and do a little training session on top of practice in the evening with the team?
So I'm trying to do as much as possible, but I prefer to keep the quality up and train a little less. That's what I've been trying to do during my 4 years at Harvard, and I think that's working well. So I'm always trying to be mindful of the time I spend on court, just so that the quality doesn't go down when I go to practice with the guys in the evening. But yeah, I still try to go to the squash courts in the morning 3 or 4 times a week.
I'm curious to hear, so this is one of the Instagram questions I got by actually a fellow college squash player who I think you might be playing this season. This person, I'm not going to name names here, but I think this individual is wondering about your nutrition and do you control what you eat?
I mean, food is definitely one of my favorite things in the world, so I'm definitely trying to enjoy while eating, but at the same time, and I'm on an American campus, which means there's free soda, free burgers, so obviously I'm trying to cut this out as much as possible, and I'm not really into fast food anyway, so trying to eat as many veggies as possible and just keep a good diet, but also enjoying myself.
Gotcha. Kind of diving into one of the first discussion points. As a college squash player yourself, I think we'd be remiss not to mention the Twitter blow up that happened in February. For those of you who are not aware of what happened, a professional player named Mazen Hesham posed the question of if college squash is good for the PSA. And a lot of people responded under that, and I think Victor and Amanda Sobey, who's world number 3, gave very well-written responses and kind of opened up the discussions. I know you've well articulated. For people who haven't checked it out, you should check it out. If you want to articulate here a little bit on your stance on it, that would be great.
Yeah, I think Mazen was just articulating the point that while going to college, many of us decide at some point to kind of give up on professional squash, to leave a quote, under quotation, like a normal life. One day is not like being a professional athlete. So he's frustrated to the fact that lots of players, especially from Europe and Australia, New Zealand, and other parts of the world, go to USA to have a degree and then kind of start playing squash. And he'd like more junior players to jump into the tour right after high school or junior career. First, I want to acknowledge that going to college is not something that everybody has to do.
Yeah.
And some of us might want to just jump on the tour, and that's fine. But I don't think those who choose to go to college and at the same time focus on squash so that they can turn professional afterwards is a bad thing for the sport, because I think we grow so much as a person and a player during those 4 years, and it helps us tremendously afterwards on the Pro Tour. And I think just looking at the players right now on the PSA Tour, Amanda is doing superbly well, number 3 in the world. Ali's been number 1 for a few years right now. And not only those players, because if we only looked at Amanda and Ali, then we could say those are outliers, and then the rest of the players are just not able to have a successful professional career afterwards. But it's not the case. Lots of players are doing both, and it's working pretty well. So I think the CSA is also aware that some players want to go pro but are frustrated by the fact that there aren't many opportunities to play on the Pro Tour, and NCAA regulations are kind of stopping us from doing so. Again, like, American players are trying to turn professional more and more often. Timothy Bromwell, Spencer Lovejoy are 2 really good examples. I think Andrew Douglas might become a full-time professional once he finishes his college degree. I think Amanda gave a well-written response, which is rare on Twitter, because she was frustrated at the fact that many people think players go to college and then kind of stop caring about squash.
I think the biggest question is that, for the PSA's perspective, I think it is a loss, because, as you mentioned, the whole attractiveness of the PSA is a huge factor in terms of prize money and how opportunities open up. And if they are losing, 4 years of where, the example of you, could have made up to top 5 in the world in the span, if you hadn't gone to Harvard, that might be a great boost for the branding of PSA. So I think a lot of what has to happen is the PSA needs to think critically of how to be a more attractive association, because I do think they are losing. And I do want to mention, even when Ali Farag was in college, there was another player called Amr Khalifa, who was an incredible junior player, and I think he was an incredible talent, who won World Juniors over Ali Farag when they were in juniors, and he kind of disappeared after in the college scene. So in a way, in the perspective of PSA, because they're not making themselves as attractive as possible, they are losing players.
Yeah, but I think Amal Khalifa is a good example. Again, I don't want to speak on his behalf, but I think that if he chose to not to turn pro afterwards, it's because it was the right decision for himself.
Right.
In some sense, I don't care about what the PSA wants. Like, I'd rather care about the players themselves, and I think that if they choose not to go pro, then this is their personal decision. I think that's the best for them. For example, Marwan Tariq is for me, is the best example, because I've seen him grow up, and I've seen him during my 4 years on college, and he's one of my best friends. And he won the World Junior Championship, beating me in the final. And I think that if he doesn't go pro, there's nothing wrong about it. He's still going to be very, very happy about his life, very happy about his junior career. He will have done well in college squash. But I think that if he decides not to go pro, it's just because the life of an athlete is just not for him. I'd rather have someone not turn pro and enjoy whatever they're doing, rather than turning pro and then at some point just hitting a wall and be like, what am I going to do with my life? Because being a professional athlete is not as easy as some people say. It's not fun every day. Personally, I like being away from home, and I like to discover many places, but I know many professional athletes who are on the tour, and when we are playing professional events, all they're talking about is going home. When am I going to be home, right? And so for some people, it's so important to be home with their family, to have a stable life, a stable income, and you can have this if you're a professional athlete. So as good as those players are, I think it's really important to think about their well-being before thinking about the PSA. And as you say, I'm sure the PSA can do better to accommodate all those players. But at the end of the day, I'd rather focus on their well-being rather than the health of the Professional Squash Association.
Right. No, that's a great point. That is a great point. I'm curious, when did that decision come for you? Did you always have, from the very beginning, a plan to go to college and then pursue after?
Yeah, so being a professional athlete is something that I always thought about. And one of the things that makes me smile sometimes is I would go to my grandparents' house and they would ask me, so what do you want to do later when you'll be an adult? And I'm like, well, I want to be a professional squash player. And I'd be like, no, but like a real job. I'd be like, a player.
Ouch.
But yeah, I think that my parents always educated me in a way that if I wasn't doing well in school, I wouldn't go to squash gym. I wouldn't be able to train as many hours as I did. So that was always really important for me to do well in school, because I knew that if I wasn't, I wouldn't be able to go to the squash courts every day and to do what I like the most. So I looked into a few universities back home in France, because squash is not an Olympic sport. It's pretty difficult to get into the best schools in the country and still being able to train every day. So if I were to stay in France, I would have had to choose between being a professional athlete or doing my academics. So I quickly turned my attention to the American colleges. I knew Ali and Manda came here and they did it, so why not me? Again, many people were telling me that those are outliers, you might not be able to do the same. But like, I'm going to do the same.
You're doing pretty well,
I think
consider.
That's possible.
Yeah.
And at first, Gaultier started to talk to me from Penn Squash.
Oh, wow. Victor could have gone to Penn.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would have been interesting.
And he kind of taught me everything about college squash and how to apply to an American university, how to practice for the SAT. So I'm really grateful for help during just probably 2 or 3 years before applying. It was a huge help, and I would probably not have been able to go to the States without him. So
I mean, that's incredible. Gilly Lane got Victor into Harvard pretty much, even though he's the coach of UPenn. So that's pretty funny. Hopefully he hasn't taken it too personally, because UPenn's built a great program themselves and I think are huge contenders for this season. And I'm really excited to watch and follow along.
No, same.
Yeah, kind of shifting gears here now for the 2021-2022 season for college squash. I think it's your senior year now. You took your junior year online, from my knowledge, and then freshman, sophomore year campaigns were
successful.
A little successful, to say the least. I'm curious, looking ahead of this season, I don't know if a lot of people know about this because it's pretty low key, but there's the Price Bullington Invitational that happens right before the season starts with matches, and I didn't think I saw your name on the list this year.
No,
and I'm curious why you don't participate in that invitational and how that even works. Do you get an invite?
Yeah, the PBI event. That's what we call it, but you got the
PBI.
You got the full name. Yeah, so during my first 2 years, I got an invitation. So you usually receive an email from Ted Price, who's organizing the event, and he's usually giving invitations to number 1 and number 2 of each team. I think it's a 60-player draw, if I'm right. But during my first 2 years, I remember I had PSA events at the same date, and this year again, I had the PSA. I have a PSA event next week, and so.
Oh, which event are you?
I'm playing in Houston, in Texas.
Okay.
It's a 20K. So excited about this one.
We'll be keeping eyes on that one, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would have loved to play that event because Marwan went there a few times and other of my teammates went, and they always talked greatly about the tournament. It's just that personally, it's just important to take any opportunity I have to play on the Pro Tour, and so since this tournament was on the calendar, it's a 20K, and there aren't many events that I can play in October and November due to midterms, exams, and college matches. Decided to go to Houston instead.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great event. I just wish they kind of publicized it more, because it's really the down low, and I don't think a lot of people know about this event. So it would have been nice if they live streamed it or publicized it on the CSA, but I don't think they really do. But yeah, I wanted to kind of talk about your freshman sophomore year, which were very successful. Freshman year, in terms of accolades, was flawless. You guys won the team championships. You took away the individuals. And your sophomore year, you were undefeated until individuals came up. So a perfect season for you. I don't think you lost one match during the entire season.
Didn't I lose to Andrew Douglas one or twice?
No, I think you lost to him your freshman year, from what I checked, but not your sophomore year. And yeah, I was curious. You were coming off of a high entering the individual tournament, and how did you cope with the loss? It was a huge shock to everyone, and I know it was held at Penn, so there was definitely the home crowd advantage there, but being that expectations on you are very high all the time, and people are expecting you to win every match. So how did you handle that when you did lose to James Flynn?
Well, honestly, I'm very open to talk about it right after the match, or even right now, a year and a half after that happens. I think he just played way better than me on the day, and he was just a better player, so he deserved to win. And there's nothing more to talk about the match. I think he was just way better than me on the day. Personally, I had a long and tiring season, and I also had a few stuff going on that made it a tougher season than during my freshman year. In January, I broke my left wrist while training. It's just like hit the wall, and while I was trying to avoid the wall, I kind of like put my hand on the wall and broke my wrist. Also had stitches, but it didn't affect me that much during the individuals because it was a long time afterwards. But I remember end of January, beginning of February, I was still on the bench or refereeing, watching my teammates, and as much as I had a good time watching my teammates win matches, well, I had like to be on court and be competing with them.
Now, looking ahead to this season, I'm curious to hear about your goals for this season. Is that something that you're actively writing down of what you want to achieve before you graduate?
Yeah, no, each year I write long-term goals, well, medium-term goals down, which is like the season goals. I also write down goals for the month. So each month I set like a result goal. So if I have a tournament that I'm going to play, I set a goal, either, I don't know, make the semifinal, the round 16, or win the event. And then I also set a goal, but which is more focused on anything, anything but not a result goal. So it could be like try to hit more volley drops, or focus on your sleep schedule, stuff like that. Yeah. So I do this every month. I set my goals for the season, and obviously I've got my goals for my career as well. For this season, I mean, same as freshman and sophomore year, my goal is to win the individuals and win all my matches when I play for the team, and then if the team wins the team championship, great. But this is out of my control, so all I can do is win all the matches that I will play with the team, and then hopefully it will help the team to win the championship.
Speaking of things you can control, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Top 5 most dangerous college squash players for you this season, coming into this season.
This season, should I only, well, the last... And
this is for your individual perspective.
For the individual, so it's not just number 1 or number 2. Well, I'll put Marwan in there.
Marwan,
because he's like, even when he's not prepared or not 100% at his best, he's always so experienced and sneaky on court that he can win points, even though you think you win those points 100 times. And he's evolved since his freshman and sophomore year. And so anytime, I remember he would struggle when he would play lower ranked players, and now at least when we play challenge matches, he doesn't give anything to the lower ranked players. So it really shows consistency and how he can use his experience from his junior career and also from his college squash, because gotta remember he won the last individual championship. So yeah, Marwan is in there. Well, Youssef Ibrahim, of course, because he's been playing fantastically in the Pro Tour. We'll see how he'll adapt to the higher team though, because he's always been
oh wow, that's an interesting point. Yeah,
one of his nightmare playing on the higher team. So
do you think that's because of how he goes for the low percentage shots?
Yeah, he's just a very
changes the dynamic.
He's a very attacking player, and he doesn't really care about whether he needs to play with a high margin or a low margin. So he just go for it, and most of the time it goes in. But when you play on the PSA tour on the low team, then your opponents, even though they're probably better than on the college tour, they'll pick up a fewer balls than when we play on a high team. So it definitely makes a huge difference to play on a high or a low team. And I would even say we play different games when we play low and or high teams. But yeah, Youssef, Marwan, I mean, Andrew Douglas and Ali Abu from Pans are two very dangerous players, because they're so hungry on court and they give their 100% all the time. And I'm sure the goal is also to win the championship. So they're really going to go after it. That's what I mean. I'm gonna say I'm gonna say a fifth, but obviously I'll forget other players. But Ali Hussein as well from UVA might be one of the contenders.
That's interesting. I kind of want to go back to battles with Andrew Douglas through your freshman and sophomore year.
Yep. And even during my junior career.
Your junior career as well. I want to dive into how you prep up for matches like that, big matches where it could go either way. Are you preparing the night before of a game plan?
Well, when you've played a play so many times, I'd say it's easier to prepare for that match. But at the same time, you also have not so many expectations, but you know what to expect, and so you need to get ready for that. It's not like you prepare for any other match because you don't know how the player is gonna play, react, and behave on court. You actually know how this player is gonna play, react, and behave on court. So you already have some hints of how the match is gonna evolve, and so you can definitely prepare mentally better than you would against any other player. But it's also tricky because you sometimes focus more on your opponent rather than on yourself. So it's always important to just go back and just put the attention on yourself rather than your opponent, on what you have to do rather than on what he's going to do. And it's always a tricky thing to do. But I'd say, with Coach Mike Way, we always do some mental scripting the day before and even the morning before the match, kind of going through main takeaways on what we have to focus on during the match. So for me, it's often, for example, critical scores at the end of the game, so how I should play during those rallies, or maybe I remember freshman and sophomore year, a big thing was try to stay focus on myself after refereeing decisions, and not trying to have too many conversations with the ref, because that would kind of make me lose my focus for 2 or 3 points afterwards.
I heard on another interview too, you were pretty self-critical about how you engage with referees. Yeah. Given that on the outside perspective, it seems you don't interact with refs that much and you're pretty soft-spoken, you kind of keep it to yourself. Yeah. But is that something that you are always keeping in mind of decision?
Well, I think that's the thing. If people think that I'm not interacting with the ref, then when I am, it means that I'm in trouble, that something's going wrong, or that I'm not focusing 100% on my squash anymore. And so yeah, I definitely try to work on this. So my dad always told me that whenever I speak to a ref, then I'll lose the next point or two. And when I was younger, I would always tell him, well, look at Jonathan Power. He always talks to the ref, and he's doing so great afterwards.
Yeah, he's a great example.
I wanted to be like him when I was like really young, like 9-10 years old. And so he'd be like, yeah, it's working for him, but it's definitely not working for you, so you need to change that.
I mean, yeah, I feel like Marwan Elstrabagi also plays better when he starts arguing, and I kind of miss it because he hasn't been this season, and I don't know, the results haven't been up to what it was last season.
Yeah,
so
no, definitely.
Maybe interacting with the ref is better. So kind of shifting gears here, it's not a secret that you're going professional right after you graduate.
No.
And I'm interested to hear how you're going to navigate. Do you have everything set in plan of what you're going to do once you start going full-time? Where are you going to be based? Are you going to have a team behind you? Are you just going to be working with the French national team? Are you going to have a mental coach? So I'm curious to hear how you're going to navigate that plan.
Yeah. I mean, once I graduate, I'll definitely go home. So in my small town in the southeast part of France. And I've got the National Squash Center. The French National Squash Center is an hour drive away from where I live. So during my last year, during COVID, I was home taking classes online in the afternoon because we have the 6-hour difference. And so I would train with my dad and some local players at home, some juniors. Once or twice during the week, I would drive to Aix-en-Provence and play with all the other top French players. And that's always been something that I've been doing when going home. And I think that's working pretty well. So it's going to be my base, just being home, working with my coach, dad, and being with the family, and driving to Aix-en-Provence when I can to play, well, mostly match.
I asked this question because part of me knew that you would be based in France, but I was also curious to hear you being in Boston, also Lincou's in Boston. You have so many resources opened in the States as well. Do you ever consider maybe I want my base elsewhere? Or another question is, are you open-minded in terms of switching where you want to be?
No. I mean, during the early years of my professional squash life, I would definitely be home will definitely be my home base, because I think it's important to just reconnect with my home and being like 100% with my coach every day, to try and improve as much as I can during those first few years. But then when I'll get older and I'll have more experience, I'll definitely be willing to live somewhere else if this opportunity opens or happens. And I mean, Boston will always going to be my second home, to be honest. So whenever I'll play an event in the USA, I'll probably spend a week or two before or after the event. So yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to going back to Boston a few times during the year, train with the team, see Mike, Hamid, and Luke, and our coaches, and I mean also Thierry, because I also spend a lot of time training and hanging out with Thierry in Boston. I mean, Thierry was one of the reasons why I chose to go to Harvard and not Penn, to be honest with you. It was always like, all right, if something goes wrong, I'm always going to have Thierry around, who'll be happy to help me with whatever things I need. It doesn't have to be squash, to be honest. And so I took comfort in knowing that I would have someone near me to help me if something went wrong, or if I was sick or anything. And so I remember freshman and sophomore years, I would sometimes go and play with Thierry on Saturdays, and then we would go out for dinner, and we'd spend the whole evening together with his family, and that would be great to just reconnect with French family and particularly with Thierry. Fun fact, my dad learned to be a coach, was influenced by Thierry's coach. How my dad thinks about squash is pretty much how Thierry's coach was, thought about squash. So that's probably why I have a very similar game to
How do you feel when people make those comparisons? Can you guys stop comparing me? I just want to be my own brand of squash, or do you just feel great that you are being compared to him?
No, I feel great. It's an honor.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be compared to Thierry. He's he was as much a good squash player as a great person. So no, it's definitely an honor to be compared to him, and maybe people will compare other juniors to me one day. But at the moment, I'm really happy that people are comparing me to Thierry. No, for sure.
Now, I kind of want to ask a question now. Are you more in favor of the playing style of like Gaultier or Lincou? Which game do you think is more effective?
I mean, I would say I'd
putting you on the spot here.
I'd love to take half of Thierry's game. Well, the strength of Thierry's game and the strength of Greg's game.
Wow,
I think
taking the easy way out.
Yeah, I know. I think Greg's game is more spectacular. It's more enjoyable to watch for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that if I want to last long on tour, Thierry's game is probably better for my body. so I don't know. I mean, when I was younger, I've always looked up to those two players. And maybe more to Greg. My dad and I would often wake up in the middle of the night to watch him play. So no, I really looked up to Greg a lot, and sometimes I would try to do things the way he does, and I'd be like, well, it doesn't work for my game. So I'd rather think about my own game rather than trying to copy what he's doing. And I think it's always good to remember that the copy is never going to be as good as the original. So you might take some stuff from other players, but at the end you really have to think about your own game first.
So speaking of watching squash, I feel there must be a difference between me watching squash versus you watching squash, being that you are ranked 26th in the world. Because I just sit back and enjoy what I'm watching.
Yeah.
Are you taking notes, or you're looking at certain strengths and weaknesses when you're watching squash, or are you just, as I do, just relax and just enjoy what's happening?
Well, it depends. Before I'm going to play an opponent and I'll watch some of his matches, I'll definitely take notes. But if I'm watching the final of the Platinum event in Qatar, I'm definitely going to just enjoy it and watch the match as a squash fan. And then if I happen to play Diego or Paul the next tournament, then I'll watch the match again and I'll take notes, and I'll be more focused on how I can set a tactic in place to counter the game. But no, well, most of the time when I watch squash, it's just because I'm a squash fan and I love watching squash.
Got it. I feel that you're in an interesting spot in terms of the rankings. You're at 26 in the world. You're really knocking on the top, but you're in a little bit of mid-tier area. Anything other than platinum, you seem to be just winning. And if it's in the platinum, you're getting the top-ranked players, and it's been a repeated pattern where you're drawing Paul Cole. I'm curious what the mindset is going to a match like that, especially in terms of where you are in rankings. Are you going to every match thinking, I'm going to win with that confidence, or are you still in the stage of, I'm going to learn as much as I can and do my best? Well,
when I verbally express my emotions, I'm always going to say I'm going to win. And I think I'm trying to have this mindset as much as possible. But obviously sometimes, especially when you make it to the second or third round and you're playing someone like Paul Cole, you're like, all right, it's been a good journey so far. Do your best and try to win, but like first enjoy the moment, because you playing, I don't know, in front of the pyramids, or well, I played at the National Center second round against Paul, and it was an amazing time to be on court with him. But yeah, for example, when you start losing to a player that many times, I think I lost 4 times this year. I'm trying to adjust my mindset, and so when I was in Philly a few weeks ago and I played against Paul, well, I kind of adjusted my goal, which was to, all right, let's try to win a game, because I felt like if I managed to win a game, then something would happen in my mind, and if I know that I can win a game, then I know that I can win the match.
Right.
So I wanted to really focus on winning that, not winning that first game, but winning a game to really show myself that I can actually win the match. Well, I didn't achieve that, but hopefully it'll happen very soon. It's just that the annoying thing is that I feel like I'm improving a lot, but Paul is also improving a lot, and so, the score never really changed. Even though I feel like the rallies are being tougher for him, and we're playing some better matches. He's still having an edge over me at the end of each game. So it was just it was a good match. Paul's just playing really, really well, and
phenomenal squash.
He showed it in Qatar again, and it's great to see Diego and Paul doing so well. With this wave of Egyptians just getting.
No, it's the first time that it's in a long time that it was a non-Egyptian final. And I kind of also want to real quick talk about what's happening in the PSA right now. And as someone who has been at these tournaments, do you find certain aspects to be frustrating in terms of refereeing decisions? Because that has been a huge topic as of late. I think in the past year it's really grown in, double bounces and outs. Can you give any input to that?
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I think I've personally been impacted by the refereeing. I think during a few matches that I played, it was hard to understand the line the referees were taking, for example, at the Worlds in Chicago, or even in Philadelphia during the US Open. Again, like, PSA refereeing there's not money thrown into the PSA refereeing, and as long as it stays volunteering, like, you have to, you don't get paid, but I think that your expenses are covered by the organization or the PSA if you decide to referee during a tournament, and you probably get a little bit of money, but it's nothing compared to what you could earn while just going to your job every day. So they're doing it out of passion, and it's definitely hard to ask them to be better when they're not being paid. They're not being professional, so it's not the same thing as us, where we are asking us to be the best image, best promotion for the sport. We're being professional athletes. They're not being professional referees. So I think that's important to acknowledge this before we dive into any debate. But having said that, I think there's a lot of improvements that can be done, and it will be done if players also decide to play that game. Well, to play a free flowing squash game, which have not always been the case recently. So I think
Do you think players as of now are actively challenging those?
I mean, they're playing around
those blurry lines.
Yeah, they're playing around the rules, and I think that's fair. I mean, they're being professional athletes, and they're just trying to win as many matches as they can, and because everybody is because there is no hierarchies right now. It's not like Greg and Nick's era where, like, the top 8 was always playing the quarterfinals, and then they would actually fight against each other. But apart from that top 8, nobody else would really do any upset, or not that often. Well, right now we can see a huge shift between the old generation and the new generation.
Yeah,
and that's really exciting. But at the same time, it means that there's so much pressure going into each match because the old generation wants to stay there, and the new generation is pushing to get to the top. So I think it's just a transitory moment, or at least I hope so, in terms of how players in general behave, because obviously not everyone is behaving like the way we would not like them to behave.
Yeah.
But in terms of refereeing, it's definitely, like, we can use the technology in a much more efficient way.
How do you think the technology should be more efficient? Because I think a lot of the issues that are coming up have been said 10 years ago, and there haven't been much changes. Yes, the video review came out, but there's no camera or technology that can identify if it's double bounce or not. There's so many inconclusive things that are happening, which are, again, these issues have been up for a very long time, and no one's done anything about it. The fact that I think squash can't identify what the outlines are, that with those LED lightings that they can't, make a sound if the ball hits it, also blows my mind. Which is a super simple thing. I don't think it's that difficult, and it's impossible technology. Are there any ways that you think that the technology should be used more effectively?
I think more cameras so that we can actually cover the whole area of the court. Because sometimes we have some refereeing videos, and you can't actually see where the ball is in front of the court because it's too short. And so you have to make a decision while you don't really have all the information available to take that decision. So that's one thing. Then double bounce, honestly, it frustrates me to see double bounce being called as inconclusive. I agree that sometimes it's tough to make a decision, but we've spent 2 minutes trying to make a decision about a double bounce. So at the end, it has to be good or another. You can't give an inconclusive answer. Otherwise,
it's just wasting the 2 minutes.
Otherwise, it's better to just rely on the referee's eyes, human eyes, and we'll probably make mistakes. But I'd rather have a wrong, good or not a decision rather than inconclusive, because we spent 2 minutes working on that and using the technology. Then we can be more efficient on the video refereeing, giving decisions a little quicker. Sometimes it's difficult to have the right images, so it takes time. Sometimes the video refereeing doesn't work at all. So you ask them for a review and you can't have it. So I think that's unfortunate. But as you said, ball out, ball down. We should be able to do something about it the same way tennis can actually see where the ball is landing for every shot. In terms of refereeing, I think squash refereeing is always going to be a subjective field, and we can argue forever on which decision we want to give. I think the most important thing is to be consistent. So if you give a lay in one situation, you have to give a lay every time that happens. That's my main focus when I'm trying to referee, or when I'm trying to evaluate a referee, is that is he consistent with his decisions. I don't care if he's giving a stroke, a let or a no let in this situation. Even if I don't agree with him, if he always gives the same decision, then I'll feel I'll be okay with it. Because you just have to.
Because then you know what to do.
Yeah, you just have to get
from next on.
To get over it and adjust your behavior and the way you move on court to the way he wants you to play the ball.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you bring up the consistency factor, because I think a lot of what referees are doing right now, when you use, as you said, the subjective part about it, is that if a certain player is more likable or favorable, I think the referees are more biased. I think there has been a huge bias in terms of what's happening. I kind of want to wrap it up here. I know that went a lot longer than what we had attended to. I'm really sorry about that, and the fact that I don't think we touched on everything that we wanted to talk about as well. So hopefully I can have you again pretty regularly. But Victor, thank you for joining me today and giving the people a peep behind the scenes of the life and thoughts of Victor, a future superstar of our sport. And I really wish I can have him back on maybe mid-season or end of season of the college squash. Once you graduate, maybe a lot more. And I'm sure you're not that busy with academics and training at Harvard. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. I'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks, Sean, for inviting me again to your podcast. I'm really happy to be here, and I hope people had a fun time listening to us today. So good luck for the launching of your podcast, and I hope to see you again.